Christine Leehealey, and I'm a board-certified rheumatologist. I have treated patients with arthritis and autoimmune disease for over a decade, and some of the most common questions I get on a daily basis are, what foods should I eat to help my condition? What kind of diet is recommended to help with my joint pain? While there are no major clinical trials that have addressed this, I have begun to research these questions which are so important to my patients. Based on the medical literature we have available, I really believe in the power of food choices. And not only have I developed recommendations, but I've also incorporated these into delicious recipes to share with you.
Today I want to go into more detail about what foods produce the most uric acid, which can lead to gout attacks. Uric acid is formed from the breakdown of purines that are found in both plants and animals to varying degrees. New England Journal of Medicine in 2004 published a large 12-year prospective study involving 47,000 patients regarding what foods affect gout. It concluded that high purine meats such as beef, lamb, pork, and certain seafoods are associated with increased gout risk, while other foods like poultry and purine-rich vegetables such as asparagus and lentils are not. In addition, the research showed that within reason, the amount of purine consumed wasn't as important as the type of purines consumed. This means you could eat poultry and vegetables without risk, but the same amount of red meat would cause an attack. But the research on purines is far from conclusive. No one truly knows why different types of foods with the same purine content produce different outcomes for patients. It may be that purine bioavailability, or the ability of human gut to digest different types of purines and metabolize them to uric acid, varies between foods even though they technically may have the same amounts of purine. It may be that vegetable purines are less digestible and less absorbed than poultry purines, which in turn are less absorbed than red meat and alcohol purines. So what should individual patients do? First, trust yourself. If you find certain foods cause your gout to flare up, then cut those foods out. But if you want some rules of thumb, here's what I would say. Avoid the most commonly known high purine foods, which are beer, grain liquors, and wine, red meat such as beef, lamb, and pork, organ meats such as liver, kidney, and sweetbread, seafood such as shellfish like shrimp and lobster, and certain fish, anchovies, sardines, and mackerel. When you eat meat, it has to be in moderation. You can't be on an Atkins or paleo diet that preaches high protein intake. Try to limit your total meat intake for the day to 4 ounces, or what you can estimate to be 400 milligrams of purine. Test out whether you flare up with moderate purine foods, poultry, spinach, mushrooms, and beans. As shown in the New England Journal of Medicine study, most patients don't have more gout flare with these, but if you do, try to limit your intake to 4 ounces per day. Incorporate low purine sources of protein in your diet, such as eggs, nuts, and dairy. Drink a lot of water, not alcohol, not soda, not diet soda, and not juice. Many gout flares occur due to dehydration. If, after making these changes, your uric acid level remains well above a normal level of 6 milligrams per deciliter, for instance, 8 milligrams per deciliter or over, you will most likely need to take medication to lower it. With diet alone, though, you can actually lower your uric acid by 1 to 2 points. Regardless of whether or not you need to take uric acid lowering medication, you can help lower your uric acid level by making the right food choices. Come into my kitchen. I'll show you how.
So today I'm making a special variation on a great comfort food that everyone enjoys, lasagna. I'm making a turkey tofu lasagna, and I'm making it gout friendly in 3 ways. First thing is I'm using ground turkey, okay, instead of ground beef or veal. Now red meats such as beef and lamb have a lot more purines in it than poultry does. Secondly, I'm using a lot less meat than I otherwise would in a lasagna. Usually people use 2 to 3 pounds of ground beef for their lasagna meat sauce. I'm using less than a pound, about 12 ounces of ground turkey. And I'll show you how I buff up the lasagna in a different way later. And then lastly, I'm using a secret ingredient. I'm using tofu, which is a great part of the lasagna. I think it makes it mellow, decadent. It makes it actually more cheesy. You don't really taste the tofu because the other flavors are really overpowering. So I actually have 12 ounces of silken or very extra soft tofu here, which you can find in any grocery store. And I'm going to just dice it up with my knife here. Tofu is very water loaded, and of course you don't want a watery lasagna. So I'm going to let it sit here for about 30 minutes so all of that water can kind of seep out and you're left with the tofu curds. Okay, I'm going to save that for later. And I'm going to start with my sauce. So I've sauteed up here half a diced onion, a small zucchini, and a couple handfuls of baby carrots. Whatever you have on hand is great. I've sauteed it up with a little bit of canola oil until everything was translucent. Now you could use whatever vegetables you have on hand. You can use bell pepper if you're not sensitive to solanine. That's a good one to put in. And then here I have 12 ounces of ground turkey that I've browned up, and I'm going to add this in. Now it really is a good thing to use turkey still because it keeps my meat sauce really hearty and you still have that meat flavor, but at the same time you won't have all the purines to deal with, and hopefully you won't have your gout flare because of it. And then I'm using store-bought tomato sauce, and of course if you're sensitive to solanine, which most gout patients aren't, you can use my tomato-less tomato sauce instead. But I'm going to use here 32 ounces of tomato sauce. And I'm just going to stir all this up. And I'll get ready with my other components. Now I'm ready to put together my cheese mixture. I have here 16 ounces of low-fat cottage cheese. Now you of course could use ricotta if you like that better, but I've always put cottage cheese in my lasagnas. And it's been shown in gout studies that eating dairy on a daily basis actually has been associated with less gout flare. So I'm going to put in even more dairy with half a cup of shredded mozzarella, half a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. Okay, we got that in there. And then we have our other protein source, which is 12 ounces of silken extra soft tofu. Now I have let this sit here diced up for 30 minutes, and you can see that there's a bunch of water that's kind of drained out, which you definitely don't want in your tofu. So I'm draining that out into the sink, and I'm going to add that to my cheese mixture, along with 2 eggs, kind of as a binder. And I'm going to mix this up. Another reason I love using tofu is that there have been other studies showing plant-based purines are much less aggravating for gout flare than meat-based purines. However, some of my patients swear to me that tofu flares up their gout. So if you're one of those who are sensitive to tofu, definitely omit it. But in general, I think most people are not. All right, we're all ready to assemble. So I've got my 13 by 9 pan here, and I've cooked up my lasagna noodles according to package directions. I'm just going to layer sauce, noodle, cheese. Sauce, noodle, cheese. Here we go. Make sure you put one last layer of sauce on the top so that your noodles don't get dry. I like to add half a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese, so it's bubbly and lovely at the end. Okay, I'm going to bake this in a 375-degree oven for 50 minutes, covered with foil, and then take off the foil for the last 10 minutes. I've let my lasagna set for 20 minutes after coming out of the oven, and I've served up a nice portion here with some fresh basil on top and a little side salad. Enjoy this tasty lasagna, which has hearty meat flavor. I've taken out the high purine red meat and substituted with low purine turkey and tofu, and added low-fat dairy in as well. These changes give you a tasty dinner that won't flare up your gout. I'm Dr. Christine Leehealey, and these are Cooking Points for Healthy Joints.